Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and to this very highly requested video when I mentioned on Instagram that we were weaning my very boob obsessed toddler. So this was very much a parent imposed weaning. I have no idea how long Rowan would have continued to nurse for had we let him self wean. Like, he's 2 years old and he was showing no signs of wanting to give it up. If anything, it felt like he was getting more into it and also more reliant on it at nighttime, which we will get into. So in total, I breastfed for almost 2 years. We weaned him like 3 weeks before his second birthday. And I have done videos about my breastfeeding experience before on this channel and then also on my sex ed channel as part of the Hormone Diaries. So if you want to know a bit more about like the beginnings of it all and the experiences, then you can go watch those. But this video is going to be all about the weaning because it was time. But before we get into all of that, I want to take a minute to thank this video's sponsor, Fussy. I'm working with Fussy again. They are a refillable natural deodorant. I made the switch from antiperspirant 6 months ago. I've been using them and absolutely love it. You can get all sorts of different color cases. I obviously picked orange. I've been on a bit of a journey with natural deodorants. I've tried a few different ones that are out there and this has been the best one for me that I have tried. So definitely going to be sticking with Fussy, and they've just released a new limited edition scent called Lavender Fields, and my Lavender Fields refills just arrived today, which is good timing because this one is finished, so we need to refill it. But this smells amazing. I can smell it through the box. It is that good. So Fussy is really effective natural deodorant. It is backed by science. It's a probiotic formula that works for over 24 hours. It is eco-friendly. All of their refills are plastic-free and compostable, and their ingredients are natural, vegan, and cruelty-free. So let's refill this bad boy. It is super easy. So you just take your lid off and you give it a little squeeze here. Boop, boop, boop. And there's your old one, which you just take off, and then compostable. And then you need to give it a little twisteroo back down. So you just rewind your case. Boop, boop, bye-bye. There we go. Right, once you've rewound it all the way, you get your new refill. Delicious. Pop it in like so, reattach this thing, clippity clip, and there you go. Then you got your lid. Boop. And then when it's armpit time, just twist it up. Love it. Love it. So if you want to make the switch from antiperspirant to natural deodorant, I would highly recommend Fussy, and you can get 15% off your first order when you use my code Hannah15, link in the description. Okay, back to weaning chat. Okay, so current situation. This is what we were dealing with pre-weaning. Rowan would normally have a good feed in the morning, and then he would feed to sleep at night, and then he would feed throughout the night as he woke up, and he would need the boob to resettle. We co-slept. He has a double bed on the floor in his room, and I basically would share the bed with him all night and just boob and mouth back to sleep. And maybe he'd be waking like 3 to 5 times in the night, but would resettle fairly quickly with La Boob. Monday to Thursday, he was at his childminder, so those are the only times that he nursed. But when I was with him in the daytime on Fridays and on the weekends, some days he would go without, like it would still just be the morning feed and then nighttime. But other days he would feed like a few times a day. Like, it really just depended on the day and like how he was feeling, what was going on. But the daytimes were really no bother. Honestly, like if we could have kept the daytime feeds and like night weaned him, that would have been my like ideal situation. But we just felt like we just had to like just call it quits just to have like an easy time communicating what was happening with him. The other thing that is a bit relevant but slightly adjacent to the breastfeeding stuff is the naps. So Rowan actually dropped his last nap when he was 21 months old, which is really young, I know. But actually it's good for us because he was just never tired at bedtime, and it was an absolute mission to get him to bed, and he would be going to sleep really late. But then as soon as he dropped that nap, yes, he's like quite tired in the evening because he stayed up all day, but 7:30 asleep within 5-10 minutes, done. We have our evenings back to ourselves amazing. And he does occasionally still nap, but I would say he goes like no naps like 90% of the time. But the other thing that had happened was that he was just so much more reliant on the boob, like more so than when he was a little baby in terms of getting to sleep and staying asleep. So this was actually really tough on Dan, because if I ever went out in the evening, I would basically come back like at 10 p.m. and Dan would be carrying Rowan around to keep him asleep, or Dan would just be like lying on the sofa with Rowan like asleep on top of him. Basically, I was the only person who was able to get Rowan to sleep in his bed and keep him asleep in bed. So that was a bit of an issue. So why did we wean? And actually, I did ask for people's questions on Instagram, and I will be answering probably most of them throughout the video. But yes, somebody did ask, how did you know it was time to wean? And there were a lot of questions like that, like, how did you know? So basically, I was trapped, and I had been trapped for 2 years. And whilst a lot of that just comes with the territory of having small children and breastfeeding, it was getting to a point where I was like, we can't keep doing this. And the catalyst for that is that Dan and I are going to one of my friend's weddings in July, and we're going to be away for 2 nights without Rowan, and his grandparents are going to be babysitting him. And so that was our deadline. We're like, we have to sort this out. This kid needs to be able to be put down to sleep and to resettle throughout the night by somebody other than me and other than Dan. And Dan and I had just been talking about it for ages of like, oh yeah, when we wean Rowan, when he's off the boob, like we'll be able to do this and we can do this and like all of these different things. So we were ready, as in me and Dan were ready. Rowan, he was not ready. And it had just gotten to the point where we like knew that we needed to do this. And it was actually quite nice to have this like external deadline of the wedding to kind of give ourselves the kick up the butt to do it, because ultimately, like getting him to sleep on the boob and resettling him on the boob at night, like whilst all of that was on me, it was easy. It was what we knew, it worked. And so, you know, we could have easily just like kept going, but it was nice to kind of like have this reason to be like, right, no, let's change things up here. So what did we do? How did we approach this momentous task? So we actually decided to just completely cold turkey wean him. So normal booby schedule one day, and then the next schedule, booby's just gone, that's it, no more. So actually, Rowan didn't call it booby. His name for my milk was Mimi, which he just came up with all by himself one day. And it's actually quite handy language that it's different to booby, because he still sees my boobs and I can say to him, these are mummy's boobies, but there's no more Mimi. And that's a really actually quite useful distinction, because he's like, he still sees the boobs exist, they're mummy's boobies, but the Mimi is what's gone. That's a very useful language distinction thing that we didn't think about going into it, but thank you, Rowan, for coming up with Mimi. So the reason we decided to cold turkey him instead of like gradually do it, like night wean a bit first, or like stop feeding to sleep first and then tackle the wake up, or stop the night feeds but keep the daytime feeds. The reason we just were like, no, was to keep the messaging simple for him. He's 2. Like, he understands a lot and he's actually a really good talker. So we're able to communicate really well with him. But even so, he's 2 and he loves Mimi. And so we just did not want to confuse him with saying Mimi is available these times, but not these times. And we were just like, Mimi is gone, no more Mimi. That is just like much clearer brand messaging for us. Anyway, that's kind of how we decided to approach it. So the next thing that we did was we actually booked in the week. Dan and I looked at our calendars, we looked at our work schedules, and we were like, okay, this week is going to be the week that we tackle weaning. And Dan actually took the week off work, because we were like, the nights are going to be horrendous and we're going to need some flexibility to be able to nap during the daytime. I intended to take the week off work, and I tried to keep my schedule that week as like bare bones as possible, but things kept cropping up, and freelancer life meant that there was a lot that came up that I didn't want to say no to. And so I was working, but a bit less than usual, so was able to do some relaxing, but not as much as Dan. Dan had actually a very relaxing weaning week. So another question that I got was, how did you prepare Rowan for weaning? So we were talking about it to him for ages. Like we were already like mentioning it here and there. There was this like weaning book that I got that was fine, but we read it to him a few times. It did kind of upset him a bit because it was all about how the Mimi was going away, and he was like, oh no. So he was like understanding things, but as soon as we like had booked in that week, as soon as we knew when we were going to be doing it, that's when we really started talking to him about it a lot. And we were saying like, one day you're not going to have any Mimi. One day you're going to go to bed by yourself, or you'll be able to do cuddles with mummy and cuddles with daddy to go to sleep, and be like, yeah, because you're a big boy, and like all of that kind of stuff. And just, I don't know, just using that language around him a lot and like getting him used to the idea of it. I have no idea how much of that he was understanding and really taking in, because he would just be like, yeah, whatever. I don't really know how much toddlers understand things in the abstract. Like if it's not like immediately happening, like I don't know how good they are at like understanding like things that are gonna happen soon in the future. Like that's a bit difficult. Like we'll be like, we're going to granddad's house next weekend, and he'll be like running out the door like, granddad's house. We're like, no. So I don't know. So we did a lot of talking to him about it. Maybe it helped, I don't know. But then it was time. Weaning week was upon us. So we actually started on a Sunday night because we wanted to be able to send him off to somebody else, his childminder, to look after him for the day after that night. We were like, we cannot do a night of no boob and then have to parent the next day. Like, absolutely not. So we started Sunday night, so we at least had 4 days of then like sending him off to his childminder. So that Sunday morning was the last time that we had a feed together. It was tough. And yeah, after that feed, that's when we started to kind of really be like, okay, now there is no more Mimi. And that was emotional. Like I was like, oh, that was it. I'm done. That was it. That was the last one. And I actually went to play tennis that morning. Dan texted me saying that Rowan was being very cuddly and like saying that he wanted mummy and stuff. And I was just like, oh no, my baby, he knows something's up. But that night was night 1, and we were ready for a fight. Obviously with Dan taking the time off work, we were like fully anticipating this to be so painful and really rough, and basically us getting no sleep, because other than boobing him to sleep, the only other way that he would be able to fall asleep is Dan carrying him around, standing up. So Dan was like fully expecting just to be like on his feet carrying this kid around for hours in the middle of the night. Like that's why Dan took the week off. So that first night was really difficult, really emotional, but easier than we expected. But we really were expecting the worst. So because of the no nap thing, because he doesn't nap, he is so tired by the evening because he's still really young. So he really shouldn't be able to like go through an entire day. So he is absolutely like pooped by the end of the day. And so we did our normal bedtime routine, and then like I got into bed with him and I had my weaning uniform on. So I was like fully like t-shirt up to here, like tucked in. I was like, there is no way this kid is even going to be able to like scrape and like pull my top down to get access to the boobs. I'm like, no. I think I was even wearing a sports bra. I was like, absolutely not. But the thing that was so heartbreaking was him like crying, like, I want Mimi. Like that was probably one of the hardest things. And there was like a couple of nights of that, of him like crying, saying that he wanted Mimi, and me just having to like lie down next to him and just be like really calm and just being like, there's no more Mimi, Mimi's gone, like, love you, it's sleepy time, like all of that kind of stuff. So that first night he put up a bit of a fight, and so obviously I had to be like, I was like a zombie. I was just like a robot in like no more Mimi mode. Like I could not let him being really sad like get to me, because I just had to be like, no more Mimi, no more Mimi. But because he was so tired, he was like, you know, fighting it, but eventually he just like collapsed on top of me and fell asleep on top of me. And actually that was like a position that he fell asleep in like quite a lot that first week, where he would just like fall on top of me like on his back. And so then eventually he would just like be absolutely fast asleep, and I'd just like have to move my entire body out of the way. But then of course there were the wake ups, and they were also quite bad, and we were exhausted. We were absolute zombies. We were so tired, and you know, like Rowan was awake a lot in the night because he was like struggling to get back to sleep without the boob. And that Monday we all napped. His childminder was just like, he's just fallen asleep. And we were like, that is fine. Like, and Dan and I both napped that day. We were like completely wrecked. So even though we were like all ruined, we were kind of like, that was like easier than we were expecting. Like, we got some sleep. The other thing that happened that first week, and especially like those first few days, was we slept in all the different configurations that you can think of between our two beds. So like Rowan was asleep alone in his bed and me and Dan in our bed, and then I was in Rowan's bed with him and Dan was alone, or then Rowan and me were in our bed and Dan was in Rowan's bed, or Dan and Rowan were in Rowan's bed and I was like, we just slept all of the ways. At one point, all three of us were in our bed. Like, we were just like, whatever place was like, do you want to sleep in Rowan's bed or Mummy and Daddy's bed? It was just all over the place. And yeah, there was a lot of musical beds that first week, but we absolutely smashed it. We held our own. We were like, no more Mimi. And also, I want to add, like, some people have said, well, why didn't you just go away for a week and let Dan do it? Because I did not want to risk Dan going through all of that alone and it being really, really difficult, only for me to come back and Rowan just to be like, Mimi! That would have just been all for nothing. So I was like, I need to be there. I need to be there to be the one to tell him no more Mimi, and I need to be able to settle him without the boob. Dan needs to be able to settle him without the boob. So we were like, we both need to be here for it. But every night that week got easier, and it was always a bit different. So it depended which parent he wanted. He kind of, favored Dan for a bit because, I was not giving him what he wanted. And so he kind of like really hated me for a bit, did a lot of like pushing me away and out of bed. How he fell asleep was really different. Like, if he fell asleep like crashing on top of me, or like cuddled next to Dan, or like in Dan's arms, like there was different variations. And then it also depended on if he napped that day, because if he hadn't gotten a lot of sleep in the night, then he did need to catch up on it in the day. But eventually we got to the point where he was getting enough at night that he then wasn't napping in the day. And so we had an easier bedtime because he was so tired. But yeah, honestly, looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, we did it. It was easier than we expected. It was still really rough. I wish I didn't have to have had worked during that week, but Dan and I did get a few hours to ourselves and we went to see June in the middle of the day, June Part 2. So that felt really good, to have some like cinema time with my husband without a baby. Honestly, I feel like exhausted even just like retelling it. I'm like, but yeah, we did weaning week. We fucking did it. So obviously there's the whole thing with Rowan and like how he reacts to it and how he changes based on like not having the boob anymore. But there's also me and my boobs and my hormones. So let's talk about that. So somebody asked, did your boobs also change size dramatically? I currently have deflated tea bags for boobs, and I feel this. I feel this. So this is what happened to my boobs. On day 2, so after 2 nights of weaning, my boobs hurt so much. They were so tender and tight and sore. And the other thing that happened, I made a grave error. I was like, oh my God, I'm free, we're weaning, like no more boob. And I wore one of my old normal bras, like a normal wired bra that, makes your boobs look like they're actually 2 boobs instead of 1 boob, like all of that, like lacy, fun, flirty. Love it. Except no. I wore that on day 1, and honestly, big mistake, because that night, I genuinely think the wires bruised my boobs. I was booking doctor's appointments because I was just like, what has happened to my boobs? Like, this hurts so much. So there was like the overall kind of like achiness of all of them. But then underneath my right one, in kind of like this bit here, it was like excruciating. Like, you could not touch it. It was like I'd bruised my boobs with a wired bra. Like, it was awful. It was so painful. But what I did when the boobs were like really bad, I just did a little bit of hand expressing into a sink just to kind of like relieve it, but only a tiny, tiny bit. Because I was like, I don't want to make my boobs think that they need to still be producing. I just need to like relieve this just ever so slightly. And actually that really helped. And then basically every evening I would just give my boobs like just one squeeze, just like, Also kind of out of curiosity to be like, am I still producing milk? And you know what? 3 weeks later, at the time of recording this, I am still producing milk, but like the tiniest. It used to be like squirt out like this, like a line, but now it's like I squeeze, and then it's like a drop. So I definitely think that like very soon I'll have dried up completely. But after that day 2 like really bad boob, it got better and the boobs got squishier and it was good. But then like a week later, so a week after no Mimi, suddenly they like really hurt again. It was like, oh wait, they were like, hang on, is this change permanent? But now 3 weeks later, the boobs, they are soft. They are so soft. They're just like squishy and floppy, and yeah, I touch them and I'm like, yeah, there's no milk in there. Nah, it's all gone. But in terms of bras, I once again braved it with the wired bra, and I was out at a work event and I ended up having to take it off because I was like, I am in so much pain. Like, I think it also might have been because of pregnancy, like my ribs have expanded. So maybe I'm a different bra size, but I'm now just like back to bralettes. So I was wearing these bralettes loads during my pregnancy. My boobs are spilling out of them. They also like are a wrong fit because these stretched a lot during pregnancy. So I think I am gonna have to get some new bras, which is so annoying. I've got like so many bras from pre-pregnancy, from pregnancy, and then from nursing. I just have an abundance of bras, but none of them fit properly. None of them are fit for purpose. But then in terms of hormones and the emotions, honestly, this shocked me. And not the, oh my God, I was completely distraught, like shock. I was fully prepared to have a complete breakdown. Because when Rowan was 14 months old, he went on a nursing strike, I think when he was teething or when he was ill, and he did not nurse for 2 days, and I was beside myself. I was sobbing whilst pumping. I like cried like at least 5 or 6 times over that 2-day period, absolutely distraught by the fact that this could be the end of breastfeeding. It wasn't, obviously. He like eventually came back to the boob and I was so happy. I was so relieved. Oh my God, I'm like getting emotional thinking about that. But this weaning, like, it was okay. Like, I didn't feel like out of control like the way that I did with that. And I think to me that was like a sign that like I was well and truly ready. And also because like he had massively reduced his feeds. Like he was doing a feed in the morning, feed to sleep, and then he fed through the night. But like, how much was he really drinking? I don't know. So I really felt quite emotional in the lead up to weaning week. Like the anticipation of it was making me really sad of like, oh no, this is it. Like, this is the end of this like really special relationship that I've had with Rowan. And then on the day, like on the Sunday daytime, like I had a little cry thinking about it. And then the Monday, so like the day after the first night of weaning, I just like let it all out. I had like a full on sob with Dan. I was like, it's the end. And I was like so sad. And now I'm getting sad about it again. Oh my God, I haven't cried about it since then. What the hell, brain? Anyway, I was really sad about it. Maybe I was just in robot mode because after that, I honestly like felt fine. I think because of how well it went. I think because it worked. And then suddenly we were like, oh my God, we're in this new era of parenting. And I've been really focusing on a lot of the positive things that have come out of weaning. And now I'm remembering that it's over. Fuck. Oh no. Have I not processed this? Ooh. Okay. Take 5, everybody. Oh my God. Where the fuck's the tissues? Okay. She talks about how it was fine and she didn't get that emotional whilst crying her eyes out. Fair enough. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. I mean, what else can I say? First-hand experience. That's how the hormones are going. Ooh, and the boobs are fine. But let's talk now about the new current situation. What is happening now? But once again, everything changes so fast. So fast. But this is where we're currently at, I guess. Obviously, no more boob. We're all done. We nailed it. He has not nursed since that Sunday morning before weaning week. Sad. He is sleeping longer stretches at night, but he does still wake. So when it was like previously like maybe 3 to 5 times a night, he's kind of settled at maybe waking like 1 to 3 times a night. And when I say 1, that maybe happened once. It's probably more like 2 or 3 times a night. But the main thing that is really exciting is that I'm sleeping longer stretches at night than I have done in 2 years because Dan can resettle him. I do not have to do every single wake up. One night, I got 7 hours of sleep straight, a straight 7 hours sleep. I felt fucking incredible. Having done 2 years of 4 hours sleep max, but probably more like 2-hour chunks of sleep, let me tell you, 7 feels incredible. Last night, I got a 5. Oh, I got a 5 all in one go. And then I got, I think, another 2 after that, or 2.5. Oh, glorious. Anyway, I think that 7 hours of sleep though that I got was actually in Rowan's bed. So, you know, like he's also sleeping and able to sleep like longer stretches. I'm spending more time asleep in my actual bed. There is still an element of musical beds, but we've now kind of gotten to the point where like Dan and I will kind of negotiate like who's on what wake ups. It's kind of handy that like Dan stays up later than me, so I go to sleep, and then if Rowan wakes up whilst I'm asleep and Dan's still awake, then Dan will obviously do that resettle. Like I don't have to wake up for that anymore. Like it's amazing. And then it will be just more of a case of like, say Dan's actually like getting ready for bed and then Rowan wakes up, Dan will then just like get into bed with him, and then maybe like we'll swap in the night, or Dan will do a whole night or I'll do a whole night. It's flexible, and it also kind of depends on like who Rowan wants, because he might just be really into one of us and really not into the other one, where he'll be like kicking them out. And like last night, for instance, like Dan did the first half of the night, and then when Rowan woke up, Dan said he cuddled up to Dan, like gave him a little cuddle, and then looked up at him and was like, "No, Mummy!" Like realized that he was not who he wanted. And so then I went in with him. So as much as we can kind of like negotiate it between ourselves as adults, it also like Rowan is still running our lives very much. And so the way that we get him to sleep now is we just lie down next to him in the bed. He doesn't always want a cuddle. In fact, like sometimes stroking him, he's like, no. Like he sometimes doesn't want to be touched. Other times just like laying a hand on him, it works. And the trick that we started doing during weaning week that we've like been continuing is just like really slowly and calmly counting from 1 to 10 and then just doing that again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But just very slowly and on loop. So just be like 1, 2, 3, like that kind of speed, and like with deep breaths and things, and like just lying down next to him with your eyes closed, and then he falls asleep. I'm like, who is this child? Who is this baby? I'm like, not mine. Like, what? And one time he fell asleep without either of us in the room, and that's only happened once, and it was because Dan was in there with him and he was crying and being like, I want mummy. So Dan was like, okay, I'll go get mummy. And he leaves the room, but before I got a chance to get in there, asleep. Gone. Incredible. And also at the beginning, he very much was still crying and like occasionally asking for Mimi. And then like eventually like he would like cry himself to sleep with us there. But now he like understands the routine and he knows what's happening. So we'll like read lots of stories, he'll have his milk, and then he like, we go, okay, it's sleepy time now. And so he'll lie down and he'll get under the duvet. And so now he'll like lie down calmly. And even if he like then goes, oh, can I have some more milk? He doesn't say it like that. Can I have some more milk, mummy? No, he goes, milk, mummy, milk, more milk. Then I can go and pour him some more milk, warm it up, and come back. And he'll just still be lying there, like very peacefully, like just hanging out, like not whinging, not crying. I'm like, wow. So yeah, he's just a whole different child. Like, what on earth? Also, my parents babysat. We were up in Manchester. We thought, okay, let's test this. And Dan and I went out. We all went out for dinner. Dan and I stayed out for drinks. My parents took Rowan home and they did the whole bedtime routine and they got him to sleep. The last time my parents looked after Rowan whilst Dan and I went out when we were in Manchester, Dan and I got back and Rowan was wide awake and playing with them at 11 p.m. This time we get back, he's fast asleep. My mum and dad are sat on the sofa watching telly. We were all just like, what? So we have really high hopes for the babysitting for 2 nights for the wedding. That will be Dan's mum and her partner, but like, I have full confidence. So somebody asked, are you still able to co-sleep now that you've removed the boob option at night? So yes, it's not only that we're able to co-sleep, but we kind of still have to co-sleep because he really does just like stay asleep longer and get to sleep better if somebody is there like next to him. And oftentimes you just fall asleep next to him. Like one time I was out and then I got back home at like 8 p.m, like after Rowan's bedtime, and like the house was eerily quiet and like no one was around, and like Dan was asleep in Rowan's bed with him. So yeah, we're in this like new era of parenting. Dan and I still like aren't getting to sleep like entire nights, just us two in our bed. But hey, you know, you go from one thing and then you go to the next, and there are pros and cons of every stage. And then someone else asked, has it affected the split of labor between you and Dan for settling Rowan in the night? And yes. And this is one of the things that I find quite funny, is that like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting so much better sleep. This is amazing for me. Whereas Dan is now like getting worse sleep because he's actually having to participate in the nighttime parenting. But you know, it all comes around. Like, he spent like 6 months, maybe more, like sleeping on the floor, because it was before we did up Rowan's room, and me and Rowan slept in our bed and just Dan slept on the floor for like 6 months. So, you know, we've all done our part, and now we're able to like split the nights better. So I also wanted to chat about some of the unexpected side effects of weaning Rowan, and also answer a few more of your questions that you had. So this is a weird one, but I'm really behind on the newsletters that I subscribe to. Like, I subscribe to quite a few Substacks, and when I would be getting Rowan to sleep at night, or if he did a wake up early in the evening, I would just lie down next to him, boob in mouth, and I'd have my phone out and I would be reading newsletters. I would be like reading through all these articles and stuff that I wanted to read. That time is gone. So actually, I'm suddenly like been saving all of these newsletters to read, and I'm like, oh God, like that dedicated time of like when I would read my newsletters is no more. So I'm having to figure out like, okay, what are my priorities? Like, how much of these do I want to read, and like when can I read them? So that's not something that I had expected, but there you go. The other thing obviously is that wired bras like can go fuck themselves. Like, I don't think I'm going to be going back to them unless I'm going to like a really short thing that's maybe like a couple of hours long and I want my boobs to like look a certain way. But I think generally we're going bralettes. We're back in the bralette game, guys. And there is actually a company that I've been advertised on Instagram that do some very nice looking bralettes that I think I want to try. We'll see. So somebody asked, does he still ask to nurse? So for the first like 2 weeks or so, I would say yes. Like going to sleep, he'd be like, I want Mimi. And then I'd just be like, no, Mimi's all gone, remember? But now he doesn't ask for it when going to sleep, but he asks for his milk. But because we're often like naked around him, like when we get ready in the mornings, like we'll have a shower and Rowan will just be pottering about. He does see me naked and sees my boobs. And funnily enough, like if I'm standing up, he doesn't tend to like notice them. I think maybe if he's looking up at me, like it's a different angle. But if I'm like bending down to help him with something or do something and my boobs are out, that's when he notices them and he's like, Mimi. And I kind of like let him be curious about it. So he, you know, he'll like play with my boobs and he'll like pinch my nipples and I'll be like, ouch, please. And so he's like, look, Mimi. I'm like, yeah, those are mummy's boobies. But that's all fine, and he doesn't really do it that often. But there was one time when he did try and put my boob in his mouth, and then I had to be like, no. But it also was very funny. So he like remembers it. He does remember it. But actually, I can't remember the last time he asked to nurse. So yeah, it's been a while. Do you miss it? Well, from those tears earlier, I think we can say, yes, I do miss it, but also I'm very glad that we did it. Like, both of those things are true. Like, I loved breastfeeding. Like, it was really tricky for those first 6 weeks, and then there were some other bumps in the road, but the vast majority of the whole thing was just like, honestly, I do not have words for it. Like, it was so special to me. And I think Rowan liked it too. Did your life improve dramatically? I mean, dramatically, like, in some ways, like, yes. Like, it's weird that not a lot has changed. Like, he's still waking in the night, we still co-sleep. So not a huge amount of change, but actually, yes, this is such a dramatic change and improvement in many ways. Like, I feel so free. Like, as soon as it was done and we were confident that he was like fine without Mimi and Dan could settle him and someone else could settle him, Dan and I like looked at our calendars and I was like, bye, I'm off, and I have booked a trip to Ireland to see my friend Mel. You know, priorities, like leave your own child to go hang out with someone else and their children. But this is gonna be my first trip away from Rowan for 2 nights. So not that long, but it still feels like such a huge deal. And I think by the time you're seeing this, that trip will have already happened. But like, it feels incredible. Like I cannot describe it. It's like I'm elated. Like, I'm just like, all of these possibilities, like the world is my oyster. And obviously I'm not gonna like run off for like a couple of months and like go backpacking around Europe. Like, no, but like just the idea that there are all these possibilities, like, and the feeling that that gives me, I'm just like, wow. Wow. And another weird, unexpected thing is that Rowan is way more into reading books at bedtime now. So when Mimi was on the table, like he was tired and he just wanted to boob, and like we'd be trying to do like bedtime stories and stuff, and we'd maybe get like one out of him, and then he would just be like chucking it around and like wasn't interested, and it would just be like, no, Mimi. And we're like, okay, right, done. Whereas now he loves it. And it's like we might have to do like 5 stories, sometimes repeats of the same one, like before he's like ready to then like lie down and go to sleep. And yeah, that was just like a weird change. We were like, I was like, have you noticed that he's like way more into books now? And he's like, yeah, he's more into books. And maybe that's because before the books were like a barrier to the boob and like a barrier to this thing that he wanted. And so that's why he was more resistant to them. Whereas now they're this thing that he enjoys as part of like the whole bedtime routine and everything. So that's kind of cool. And also a lot of people did ask, how do you feel? And like, how are you? And things like that. And thank you very much. I am doing well, obviously, despite those tears. Don't let that fool you, although they're good tears because I'm just remembering like how good it was. But yeah, I'm doing great. I'm honestly doing fucking great. And Dan is doing really great too because he's able to have his evenings back as well. So like, I went out to the theatre the other night, and instead of coming back to Dan like breaking his back carrying this kid around, I get back and Rowan's asleep and Dan's had a lovely evening to himself without a child like attached to him. Like, it's just such a win for all of us, and Rowan is handling it really well as well. So yeah, I think as a family, as like me, I'm doing great, but also like as a family, we're doing great. Like, everyone is very happy with the decision and the outcome of the actions that were taken. But yeah, this has been a pretty long video just talking about boobs and Mimi and breastfeeding and weaning and all of that. But thank you for sending in your questions, and also I hope that, I don't know, you found this interesting or useful. I know that everybody's like breastfeeding and weaning experiences, you know, are so different because obviously every kid is really different and every breastfeeding relationship is really different. But if you do have any more questions, or if you just want to share your own experiences, if they're similar or different to mine, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Thanks again to Fussy for sponsoring this video. Don't forget that you can get 15% off your first order by using my link that's in the description or my code Hannah15. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.